Welcome everybody to the March 27, 2025 full board meeting. Delaware State University Board of Trustees. We welcome all trustees. We welcome the administration. We welcome all guests. We're going to try to be efficient today because we have a few presentations from some guests. And we have a special treat. We got a presentation by one of our own, Mr. Doc Ridgway. Was going to give us some enlightenment on EHBCU. So I'm calling the meeting to order. It's about 1:35. And again, we're going to try to be sufficient because we got folks that are making presentations. We got our friend Mr. John with us again. We got Mr. Braithwaite eating lunch. So we're going to try to be efficient. Are you ready to go, Mrs. Stoner?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Roll call, please, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Trustees meeting on today, Thursday, March the 27th. The Board of Trustees is chaired by Chairman Leroy Tice. Joining us today on the trustee board is our second vice chair, Norman Griffiths, Trustee John Ridgway, Trustee Jocelyn Stewart, Trustee Bernadette Dorsey Watley, Trustee Dr. Wilma Michoud, Trustee Chip Rossi, who is joining us virtually, Trustee William Colick, Trustee the Honorable Michael Perzicki, and Trustee Tetras Shockley. We are also joined by our foundation board chair, Enid Wallace Haley. The 12th president of Delaware State University is here, our very own Dr. Tony Allen, our executive vice president, Dr. Irene Hawkins, Dr. Patrice Gilliam, our interim provost, VP and chief academic officer, Dr. Kareem McLemore, VP of strategic enrollment, management and international affairs, Mr. Anas Benadi, senior VP and chief financial officer, Ms. Kenesha Ringgold, interim general counsel, VP and chief risk officer, Mr. Jonathan Starkey, Senior Advisor to the President and VP of Government Relations, Dr. Stacy Downing, Chief of Staff and VP of Strategic Initiatives, Mr. Daryl McMillan, VP and Chief Information Officer, Mr. James Overton, VP of Student Affairs and Superintendent of Public Safety, Dr. Dawn Mosley, Interim Administrator of Institutional Advancement and the DSU Foundation, as well as the Senior AVP of Marketing and Communications. Mr. Bernard Pratt, Senior AVP of Capital Planning, Construction Facilities, and Housing Management. Mr. Tony Tucker, Senior AVP of Athletics, WellRec, and the Athletic Director. And we are also joined by Kyle Spalding, who is our Associate Director of Virtual Technology. We would like to acknowledge our guests, faculty and staff who have joined us today around the room. We're going to ask that you would just stand and state your name and affiliation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sydney Brown, and I'm a junior computer science student here at Delaware State.
Welcome, Sydney.
Dr. Shaheen.
My name is Nazim Shaheen, and I'm a professor at Delaware State.
Terrell Holmes, DSU downtown.
I'm Megan Aspler with CLA, one of the auditors.
Mike Johns with CLA. Thanks.
Dan Thompson, controller. Ruben Graham, deputy athletic director.
On this side.
Oh, quick skip. I'm Paul Braithwaite. I have my own firm in Washington, D.C. called Federal Street Strategies. But I'm a Delaware State University graduate and was invited up to Allen today to give a government relations update of what's in Washington.
Welcome, Council.
Good afternoon. I'm Stan Waterman, the head men's basketball coach here at Delaware State.
Hi, I'm Melissa Harrington. I'm the Associate Vice President for Research here at Delaware State.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Chairman, this concludes our roll call.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoner, per usual. Item 3 on the agenda, the consent agenda. There are a host of meeting minutes that are contained therein, the consent agenda. Also from the Academic and Student Success Committee, we do have and emeritus approval. That is a part of that agenda. And we just were introduced to Dr. Shaheen. Someone please. Officer. Words is,
Madam Provost?
Madam Provost.
Thank you, and it's really a pleasure to be with you this morning, and more so a pleasure to be able to present you, Dr. Shaheen, for the position of emeritus. And what I do want to just say is that the emeritus status at Delaware State University is really a distinct honor to retired faculty members who have demonstrated a notable professional career and made significant contributions to the university and the local, national, and global community. The awarding of professor or associate professor emeritus, and I would say to you that Dr. Shaheen is being recommended for professor emeritus. And shall be by the Board of Trustees based upon the recommendation of the president to assume that status. The award is usually based on a variety of contributions to the university involving university positions, special projects, community service, but shall place primary consideration on excellence in teaching and exceptional evidence of national or international recognition. When it comes to looking at attempting to get the approval of recommendation for Professor Emeritus for Dr. Shaheen, what I would say to you is that after reviewing the criteria outlined in the 02 to 06 Professor Associate Emeritus Policy and Procedure document, Dr. Shaheen meets all of the eligibility requirements and has shown exceptional dedication to the students here at Delaware State University. His impressive record of grantsmanship, mentorship, service, and research makes him highly deserving of this recognition.
Yes, I just want to add, Professor Shaheen is one of the first professors I met on my arrival at Delaware State. And he has garnered more than $20 million in grant support for the Bridge to Doctorate program, the Alliance for Minority Professors, which is significant in the industry. He is a mathematician extraordinaire and leads Red and Columbia Blue. So it's my deep honor to present him for Professor Emeritus.
Dr. Michelle, you want to add anything?
I would just simply say ditto to everything that has been said. I would say that if anybody here deserves such a recognition, he certainly is among the very top of those. And I'm just so very appreciative for all that he has shared with me in my brief presidency here. But he is truly everything that has been spoken.
Dr. Shaheen, thank you for your service. Please offer any words of wisdom to the board and the community.
It's really a big honor for me to have this. I came here to Delaware State University, which was a little bit different environment for me. And I had support from colleagues from the administration, especially Dr. Harrington. We worked at the same time, but she is one of the best grant writers ever met. All the administration before, for the presidents, and really I grateful for that support and giving me that award.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. So, as has been our course of business now since we've adopted the consent agenda, all items are listed, all the information presented, obviously in the materials of the full board book. So I think now we are prepared at this time to accept a motion to pass the consent agenda so that it becomes a permanent part of our record. So moved. Very good. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Motion carries. The consent agenda for March 27, 2025 is now part of the permanent record. Thank you, folks. All right, next is the chair's report. There's a lot to cover today, particularly from our guests in a way of information. And much of that information does bear on our three strategic pillars. Finance, obviously, and our focus on the business model and innovation, which supports smart growth, student success, the production of competitive and financially healthy graduates, and obviously customer service. Lastly, our progress toward a culture of service excellence. You will hear from the president. You'll hear from CFO Nastinati. You'll also hear from Mr. Johns, our external partner, about the progress we are making. And again, you will also hear from Dr. Ridge on EHBCU, which speaks to the innovations that we are embarking upon with respect to bringing dynamic programs on a virtual platform. And again, our president is taking us to the forefront of that. By the way, I would be remiss if I did not recognize the lovely Dr. Saunders. We see your lovely face and pray for you every day. And also the handsome Mr. Chip Rossi. Welcome, Chip. Overruled, sir. But I will say this: the most critical role as a board, and I think my peers will agree, our most critical function is selection and retention of a transformational CEO. In January and February, we had virtual full board meetings with very, very involved discussions about our institution and about our leader. And I am more than elated to say that we have retained our innovative leader for another 4 years plus one. When at a time where the average tenure for a university professional now is right around 5 years, and that number is declining every day. We have secured continuity for our institution. And again, I think this is our most critical role. And I just want to welcome our guy back for another 4 years. Lastly, before we move on to the president, in his report, we had a wonderful high energy morning. I could see Dr. Michoud just she was beaming. The growth of the physical plant. And it couldn't come in a better time. We did talk about kind of the disruption that's occurring in our everyday lives. So just a few thoughts I had was a few quotes I think I pulled, is thought about when folks are assaulting equity by miscasting our capabilities. I thought about James Baldwin. He says, please try to remember that what they believe as well as what they do and cause us to endure does not testify to our inferiority, but to their inhumanity. I also think about when folks intentionally and strategically sow uncertainty. And we're going to hear from Councilor Braithwaite about the uncertainty that's coming out of the Beltway. I thought about Marcus Aurelius. He said, never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. I was next reminded by some words I read from Cornel West when he's questioning the future and what lies ahead. He stated like this: he kind of wrestles with the interplay of hope, optimism, and despair. Optimism and despair are evidence-based notions. Cornel West goes on to say, however, that hope is going beyond the evidence to engage in heroic actions against all odds. So what we're going to do is double down, I think, on our solidarity. And that's what you saw today, right, Dr. Michoud, with our partners flanked at our sides from the General Assembly from Agilent, from elsewhere. We're going to double down on our solidarity. We're going to continue to move the needle with respect to culture. And we're going to continue in our hope because we know when any situation arises, we will receive the answer, the strength, the right action, and the resources. They'll be there when we need it, not before nor after. So let's stay strong and let's maintain our solidarity and expand our humanity in the face of what it is that we confront daily on behalf of the folks that need us and require us for their betterment. Okay, folks, now I'll turn to our president.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
First, I want to say happy Women's History Month. So all the women in the building, please stand. All the women in the building, please stand.
Stand.
All the women. Remain standing. Not even the auditor standing. I just want to say that I was completely filled on Saturday when we had our first Women's History celebration with the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. That was keynoted by Joteka Edie. Some of you may know her as the Win with Women founder and the person they call the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley. And then today we had our second annual Women's History Month conference that featured a couple of people in this room, including our trustee Tetra Shockley, who I said during lunch really wowed the crowd. When I came back, I was there in the morning. When I came back, Tetra was all the buzz. So thank you for your words of wisdom in that regard. And then our own Kenesha Ringgold, who I'm quite proud of in her role as interim general counsel, who was part of that as well. I will say she's not here, but my wife, who does not do any public speaking, had a very nice fireside chat with Dean Edwards, and I was very proud of her as well, and I think you all would be too. And there's just some of the other people that were involved. I just want to say to all you women, in the words of Tupac, so not Cornel West, when he said, we all came from a woman, got our name from a woman, and our game from a woman. So congratulations to all of you. John Stark is like Tupac. So is Anas. Anas the same with Tupac. Yes. Google him. In the spirit of continuing our celebration, you know, women's history is not just about more seasoned women, but it's also about young women. And I am really proud of one young woman here at Delaware State University, computer science junior from Detroit. What up, though? Sydney Brown. Sydney Brown has won many awards in her very short young life, but just recently was honored by the United Negro College Fund as a premier student leader in the country, not at Delaware State, but in the country. So Sid, I thought it'd be important that you just came up and said a few words from your heart.
Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Sydney Brown. I'm a junior computer science student here at Delaware State. I think I just want to say thank you to Delaware State. Delaware State wasn't my first option, but it was the best option for me. I became debt-free my sophomore year here at Delaware State, and I haven't had to worry about anything except being a better student and being able to actually get in my career and thrive. I actually plan to work at Deloitte this summer as a consulting intern with user experience, so working on my passion of design and computer science. And I'm a Delmarva Power Scholar here, a Strata Scholar, a Deloitte Scholar, a Nesbitt Scholar. The list does go on, but I have always been in the right rooms with people who have saw my impact or just saw my passion to continue to grow. And this semester, next school year, I will be the Student Government Association Vice President. So
Let's give another round of applause for Sid. She's a very dynamic young lady. And Sid, you don't know this, but in my written president's report, I talked all about all of your scholarly pursuits. So thank you. I want to go right into the uncertainty we're facing here at Delaware State and in higher ed, and I might add writ large across the country, given the moment. I won't speak in any way that's partisan, except to say that at Delaware State, we're going to work and not worry. It's very important. The things that are at stake are significant. We have a $45 million research portfolio that we've grown significantly. In 2017, we were at 17 million. A portion of that research portfolio is at risk, to be clear, given some of the things we've heard from the current administration. 50% of our undergraduates are Pell Grant eligible, and that's how we like it. And about half of them are first-generation college students too. That's how we like it. So core to our mission is making sure that we're putting a hand up and an open door where we can. If things like Pell Grants are at risk or other student loans, those things could cripple the university, upwards of about $70 million. And there are other things. You've heard specifically from this administration about what I would call the assault on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've said publicly on this campus and in other corners, unless the board directs me otherwise, diversity, equity, and inclusion is alive and well at Delaware State University, and that will not change. I'm very proud of that, but I'm not silly enough to think that we can't think about all the attacks that are surrounding us. So as I thought about this meeting, I wanted to bring in a friend who is one of the best lobbyists on the Hill in the country. He said he had his own firm, Federal Street Strategies. He's a Delaware State grad and also a two-time Duke University grad, including his law school degree. We were actually classmates once for 4 weeks. He has a very rich history at Delaware State University. Lots of his family came through here, so you probably know the Braithwaite name very well. But somehow he thought he was going to the University of Delaware in the fall of '87. I met him there in a summer program, and by the fall, he wasn't there anymore. And I didn't see him again for another 4 or 5 years. But I'm glad that Paul and I have stayed friends. Just so you know, he's also the lobbyist for the Council of 1890s. So it's very, very involved with our space and our people in a number of ways. So I wanted to have him spend a few minutes, and this is a time for you board members to think of any questions you might have, because you literally have an expert on the Hill in front of you. So I will turn over my time to Mr. Paul Braithwaite. Paul.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, President Allen. Thank you, Chairman Tice, for having me here today. It's an honor. And I know people say that when they get up and start speaking, but this is indeed an honor for me to be here. I'm back home, both literally and figuratively. Where that business school is where I lived when I was 5 years old. There used to be faculty housing there. And my mom raised me, my two sisters and brother in a 3-story apartment building where faculty lived. So I used to ride my bicycle in the parking lot that I just drove through as a kid when everybody left and all the cars were gone. So when I say I'm back home, I really am back home, and I haven't forgotten where I came from, which is why I came here today. My mom taught in the Education Humanities building for 25 years. She was an English professor, is an English professor. She still teaches me English, and if my verbs and subjects aren't correct for whatever reason, she will correct me. But I saw her this morning and I told her I was coming, and she told me to do well. So I hope if and when you all see her, you will tell her I did well. I do have my own firm now in Washington. I loved politics. I was a political science major here. And so I get up thinking about politics and I go to sleep thinking about politics. I just didn't think people were going to pay me a lot of money to do it, which is what I'm grateful for, because you can actually take care of your family doing this. But I heard the chairman mention James Baldwin, and I heard the president mention Tupac. I'm going to mention Thomas Paine, who said, the times have found us, and the times have found everybody in this room in 2025. And my advice, in addition to working and not worrying, is to stay ready, because every day brings a new thing that we are going to have to confront. And I think we are seeing that universities are at the center of this. You all can just read in the paper every day that something different is happening on a university campus that involves the government, which has not traditionally been the case. Columbia University had their federal funding frozen, and they 1 year, $400 million. They had 2 weeks to acquiesce to requirements that the administration had put forward, all in response to protests that were happened on their campus last year. In addition to that, a number of foreign students who have come to the United States on student visas have been arrested by plainclothes folks in the middle of the day, and have been taken away. No charges against them, but for them supposedly either writing an op-ed or protesting the war between Israel and Gaza. And I share that with you all just to say that those things can be visited upon Delaware State University, because Columbia didn't get a warning. Tufts University, where a woman was just arrested yesterday, did not get a warning. There was an arrest at the University of Alabama this week, no warning to the administration. And so it is not normal for ICE personnel to come on your campuses. It's not normal for you to get a letter saying that your federal fundings have been frozen for what they say to be diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that is what some schools have received. But you have to be thinking about game plans as to what happens if our funding is eliminated. What happens if our budgets are cut 10, 20, 25%? And what does that do to the institution and the students and the faculty and the communities that you all serve? This place is an economic engine for the state of Delaware. Our storytelling about the role and the importance of what we do in our community, not just for Black people, but for the entire state of Delaware, and I would venture to say for the country, has to be told, and it has to be told with clarity. And we have to have our facts ready when we're telling our story. There are lots of elephants in the room, but again, I don't think that we have faced a situation where there's been a proposal to close the Department of Education and return functions back to the states. At the K through 12 level, you all know states have the role of running schools. So that's not new, and that wouldn't be new in a closing of the Department of Education. What would be new is that the money would go to the states, and states could decide what they want to do. The reason President Carter created the Department of Education in 1979 was because he thought there should be uniform standards across our country that students had to attain, whether it's K through 12 or higher ed. If we have 50 different types of educational systems in our country and 50 different standards around this concept of state rights, I can tell you without fear of contradiction who is going to lose in that battle. And it's the first generation students who come to Delaware State University, and the students who are on Pell Grant who need that grant to come to the to come to higher education so that they can get a brighter future for them and for their family. So I would just say this, unless and until the Congress, because if you just look at what the current political makeup is, you have a Republican administration, you have a Republican Senate, and you have a Republican House. There is very little that the minority party can do in that sense. And so it is going to take a coalition of people who I think want history to judge them fairly, to stand up in this moment and say, this is the North Star we want for our country, and it includes all of Americans. It doesn't exclude people because of their race or religion or upbringing or where they're from, urban or rural or suburban, includes all of us. And so if we are to move forward as a country and not have division and not have strife, we are going to have to figure out how we work through these things, not by one person or one group of people saying they are going to do this or impose this on you. And I'll give you an example, and then I'm happy to take questions from you all that you might have. I mentioned Columbia University, and I'll mention the University of Maine. The governor of Maine is a woman named Janet Mills, and she came to Washington with all the governors about 3 weeks ago, and they were in a room like this in the White House, in the East Room of the White House, and the president asked if the governor of Maine was here, and she says, "I'm here." And he says, I understand that you are not going to follow the law as it relates to transgender men in playing or in athletics or what have you. And she says, I'm going to follow this law of Maine, the state of Maine, and I'm going to follow the federal government's law. That's what I'm going to do. And the president said, well, if you're not going to follow my executive order, you all are going to have problems in Maine. Next Monday, the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health and Human Services sent a letter to Maine saying that their federal funding had been frozen. And, those are the facts. The interesting point about this, though, is if we're going to turn things over to the state and allow states to do what they want to do, you have to let states do what they want to do. It can't be we're going to turn it over, but you're only going to get the money if you do what we tell you to do, or if you follow what we think should be the right thing. And that's not taking a position on transgender athletes. That's not taking a position on Title IX. That's just saying it's either one or the other. And using the awesome levers of the federal government, whether it be money or just this past week, a number of law firms have been included in executive orders that say if you file a lawsuit against the federal government, the Department of Justice or the Department of Homeland Security will investigate you, and you may not be permitted to go into federal government buildings. That's what the executive order says. So if I worked at a law firm, Paul Weiss is a law firm in New York, a big prominent law firm in New York, and literally there was an executive order that said that Paul Weiss employees would not be permitted to go into any federal building in the United States of America for any reason, and that everyone who worked there's security clearances had been revoked. Again, most Americans are not following these day to day. No one knows who Paul Weiss is unless you're involved in the legal space. But that wasn't the only law firm, but there was 2 or 3 others. But the point of that is to say to them, to say to Columbia, to say to University of Maine, and to tell everyone else who is similarly situated, we can come after you as well if you don't acquiesce and follow what we want to do. And so, again, I just go back to this theme of being ready and having contingency plans for any occurrence. I'm fearful that there is that this is not going necessarily in the right direction, and that from a security standpoint and a policing standpoint and from a safety standpoint for the kids who go to this university, again, those things have to be considered as well, because let's say two carloads of ICE officials come on this campus and the students see this, and one of their classmates is literally, this person at Tufts was abducted on video that everyone in this room can see by plainclothes people who did not have badges and had masks on. Jesus. Now, you could think that someone was kidnapping your friend, and you wouldn't be wrong. Now, they could produce badges, but how would you have known that? And again, that's not what we're used to in the United States of America. And I never thought that I would be saying any of this or reading any of this on a daily basis. But it is where we are. And as I will stop where I started, which is the times have found us, and we have to step up to the occasion and use the best creative thinking that we have, the best strategy that we have, the best ideas that we have, and win on that. by bringing everyone together. No one's excluded from this conversation because we're all impacted. Even if we want to hunker down and hide, we're not going to be able to, because we live in a moment now where all of it is technically in reality at stake for how we have known our country to be over the many years that we've all worked in our spaces that we've worked on. So I'll pause there. I have other examples. I don't want to depress you all after lunch, but I do want, because of the awesome responsibilities that you all have as stewards of this great institution. I see the 1890 number up there on the wall. I started working with the 1890s about 10 years ago when they had their 125th anniversary, and they wanted to raise their profile, and they wanted to have Congress have a hearing about the good work that the 1890s are doing. And we were successful in doing that. And most times when they talked about historically Black colleges and universities, it was UNCF and the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. And now they talk about the 1890 universities in the same breath because of presidents like President Allen and presidents like President Anderson at University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and all of our 19 presidents who have helped to really raise our profile in the ag space in particular, but lots of other faces as well, to give the country a glimpse and give policymakers a glimpse of the work that happens here and the impact it has all around both our communities and the states that we serve in. So thank you all again. And again, I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President.
Questions for Councilor Braithwaite? Councilor?
Yeah, so I'm like, I was political junkie. I'm following this way too closely, and it's making me miserable. One of the things that you did say was you said that you think that some folks want history to judge them in the right light. Any glimmers in this, House and this Senate right now that somebody might on the Republican side stand up, or are we just waiting for 2 years?
I think the short answer is yes, because I just have to be an optimist and can't think that we're going to go on like this for the next 22 months before the next election. There's too much at stake for our country for that to happen. And I think, some group of Republicans are going to at some point realize that they have to take back their power. And I think it's going to be leaders like you all in this room who are going to have, to the extent that you all have relationships with members of Congress. Delaware has two wonderful senators and a member of Congress who are all Democrats. So, their ability to influence their Republican colleagues isn't limited. It is not as going to be persuasive as if you had a Republican member of your delegation. I was at a dinner last evening. I'm on a board of an organization called Center Forward, and everything they do requires them to have a Democrat and a Republican come together to talk about an issue they want to work on. And there were two New York members. One was Nick Langworthy from New York, and another one was Joe Morelli. And they've known each other for 20 years. And one of the things that they've said is the reason we can get along is because we know each other. I know his wife, he knows my wife, I know his kids, they know my kids. We've grown up together in New York politics and the like. But we don't get enough time to spend with each other to be able to think about ways to work on bigger picture atmospheric things. Because again, once you put your head up, you basically are saying, all right, this is probably going to be my last term, but I'm going to try to do the right thing. And years ago, when President Nixon was president and Watergate had just started to bubble and the like, there was a congressman from Maryland who was a Republican. It was Larry Hogan's, the former governor of Maryland's father, who was the first Republican to say to Richard Nixon, what I've seen and the evidence I've seen is wrong, and Mr. President, you should probably step down. He ended up losing his seat for that, but he understood that he was going to probably take some consequences. And at some point, I think there are enough decent public officials, Democrats, Republicans, who ran for the right reason, who will see possibly because they look at their children or they look at their communities and they say, well, wait a minute, I'm not sure this is the road that I wanted to go down. And it's only going to take a few of them. And once that dam breaks, for whatever reason that it breaks, there will be some profiles in courage, I believe. I don't know what the tipping point is. I'm hopeful that the tipping point is not after there's been some calamity that's caused death or destruction. I'm hopeful that it will be, look, the president's supposed to be able to propose. Every administration gets to propose what they want to do. That's not in question. What's in question is you then propose it to Congress, and Congress decides how the money is going to be spent and what's going to happen. What's happening now is not that. Congress has basically said, here's the money and the administration has said, whether it's the State Department, which is literally suspended funding for student exchange programs. So there are students overseas who we sent as scholars, Fulbright scholars and other scholars, and their funding is frozen. They can't access it. So imagine being in Greece or Europe or somewhere in around the world. You're supposed to get a stipend of $1,000 a month to pay your rent and your tuition or whatever it is you're doing, and that funding is frozen while someone in Washington does a review. And oh, by the way, when they say they've riffed people, those people are being really riffed. Like there's no one there who's in the exchange program now. So all the knowledge that you had and the expertise for these people who say these bureaucrats don't know what to do, I will take any secretary in this building before any administrator because they know where all the bodies are buried. They can give me my transcript, they can give me my invoice, they can give me everything. Now, the president might be able to waive some of those costs or what have you, but the people who run this place know exactly where all the things are. You can't get rid of them, from the FBI to the Department of Education to this morning. Secretary Kennedy, the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, says we're going to cut the department by 20,000 people. That's 25% of the workforce at the Department of Health and Human Services. That has got to impact services that people rely on. And this is at the same time that as they're closing the Department of Education, they've said we're going to shift the disabilities function that the Department of Education had to the Department of Health and Human Services. And the Department of Health and Human Services just said, we're going to cut 20,000 people. So we're going to give them more responsibilities and they're going to have less people. And I just think that families and people and elected officials with children with disabilities are going to look around and say, I'm not sure that's going to work. And that's where you're going to see people step up, I think, and say, we're not doing that because it's not good for the country. And if I lose in 2026, so be it.
Other questions? I'm sorry, Vice Chair.
I have one. You know, the tariffs is one example of what I'm about to say, but by the fact the administration has changed up so much on how it attacks somebody, how it gets its retribution, all that stuff, how do you prepare? How do you prepare a plan to, first of all, deal with the first one, a 45 million research portfolio? If we go in and did something now as a board on all of our research to diminish the effect of them taking that away, and then they pick one of the other ones and don't even bother with that. I mean, how do you know which is the right pick? I mean, in terms of preparing for what's coming, because you don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's war gaming, it's war planning for the worst possible outcomes. And you know, I know it's easy to say diversify the money that comes into the universities from the private sector versus the public sector. But look, the state of Delaware is going to have to step up too. You all are serving the state of Delaware. You have a remit to serve all three counties in Delaware, not just Dover, Kent, Sussex, and Newcastle. And so I realize budgets are going to be tight for everybody, but at some level, we're going to have to ask. I mean, if $45 million goes away, I don't know what portion of that is from the state of Delaware. That's probably all federal. Most of it's probably all federal funding. I mean, the state has to match some dollars to that. Is Fed? So again, state of Delaware, the companies who rely on the workforce that comes out of this university, I mean, they're going to need workers to make their innovation, one of the three pillars of the university's planning, to make it work. But I also think we're going to have to be not shy about going and asking larger private sector entities to step up in ways. Don't give me $25 million over 5 years. Give me $25 million over 1 year. Give me $100 million over 5 years, so I have $25 million. And even if I have to cut from 45 to 25, you know, and maybe others then follow. I mean, it's a situation where, again, you didn't want to find yourself, but it may force us to now go find resources that would otherwise have passed us by. I would just, I mean, again, for a number of my clients that I'm doing work with, who both rely and don't rely on federal government funding, but need a functioning government. We need a Food and Drug Administration to approve clinical trials and drugs that companies produce. And if you don't have the workforce there because we've cut them, or we've cut NIH funding, or we've seen in the last 3 months, the number of very smart scientists who have left NIH should make every American very, very afraid. Because you just can't find somebody who's done 25 years of research or administration at the National Institutes of Health, which is the premier federal health research entity in the world. And you've got the principal directors, the heads of institutes just walking away and leaving and saying, I didn't sign up for this. I'm way over my years in terms of being able to retire with my full benefits. And I'm not going to do anything that compromises my career, so I'm leaving. You know, Europe is actually trying to attract some of the people who have left our government to come work for them now. And some people may say, you know what, a 4-year stint in France right now sounds pretty good. And so maybe I'll take my talents there if they're willing to have me. But I just think planning out in ways literally every day, like there's no, like people say you can't sleep, we probably can't sleep. Like half of this room has to be awake and while the other sleeps, and then we switch up and we're like, okay, we're focused on making sure that this institution not only just survives, but thrives going into the future.
Other questions? Just to follow up on that. So you, in essence, can't pre-plan for what's going to happen or what's going to come to you from the administration. Not just because of what I said earlier about change up on things, you know, like the tariffs, but because you don't know, you know, these are just some of the things. And one other thing about these items that are listed there on that chart, there's a cost that goes with each one of those things. So it's not a real $45 million. I mean, we may have had to hire scientists to perform that research. Those are costs that are going to go away and may lead to lawsuits too. And so there's a cost that goes with each one of those things that we're not going to have to pay. But that's not the point I'm making. I'm making the point of you don't know what's coming. So how do you prepare for it? Does your company do planning, pre-planning for clients to help them kind of understand where their federal dollars are coming from and what they can do to kind of blunt the force of the takeaway if they take it away?
Yeah, so most of my work for the HBCUs that I do work for is in the Farm Bill ag space. So there are at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, there are basically 5 different areas where 1890 land grants get funding. It's in the research space, it's in the extension space, it's scholarships, 1890 scholarships, it's capacity funding, it's facilities funding. I work on those. And then, you know, I always try to think about big ideas. And I mean, the Farm Bill is our big bill that they do every 5 years. But broadly speaking, I don't do appropriations work. So I don't run and chase earmarks. Most of my clients aren't seeking federal government earmarks. I'm all for earmarks. I mean, a little bit of my background before I went into the private sector, I used to work for all the African-American members of Congress. So I used to work for all the Congressional Black Caucus members for 6 years. When I started working with them, I always heard them talk about earmarks, which are now called Congressional Directed Spending, CDS, where Senator Blunt Rochester or Senator Coons can say, Del State has a proposal for $30 million to stand up whatever it is that's going to stand up. And I, as a senator, and the Congresswoman McBride want to designate this for Delaware State. Most members of Congress like that process because they know Del State's going to get the money. Whereas in a competitive process of every university around the country, and they put a whole bunch of money in a pot, when you look through and figure out who got what, you see that they didn't get very much. You know, when you put up that $45 million, when I looked at it, I thought to myself, Columbia is getting 10 times that. A private university is getting 10 times that from the federal government every single year. I didn't go and look at their endowment, but I'm just going to go out on a limb today and say it's in the billions, right? And so even if they lost that $400 million, they can go get it if they wanted to. Now, they can't go get it every single year, but they can draw down, or they could go to a bank and say, listen, I'd like to leverage our endowment to make up this funding because we know that this is going to probably go for a couple of years. So we got a reserve fund that we can play with. I mean, and that's all the major universities do. There was this chart that I loved that I used to show everybody. And one of the Inside the Beltway, and you probably know, Inside the Beltway, there's something called Politico. It's a Politico newspaper. They published a chart that showed the top 100 universities that got NIH funding. There was not one HBCU on that list. Johns Hopkins was at the top in the billions of dollars in terms of federal funding from the U.S. government for research. Johns Hopkins has one of the best universities and best research universities in the country, but I'm not sure they deserve $1.6 billion of our tax dollars. And, you know, when you become the incumbent and you get that kind of resources, I mean, let's say we dropped $1 billion on Del State and said, hey, we want you to do health research and medical research and education research. You're like, well, if I got $1 billion, I can do a whole bunch of things. I can build a hospital over here. So when my next COVID comes, I have the infrastructure. I'm ready to go. But again, we don't get that kind of funding on a regular basis. And so you're not able to plan and do that. But to answer your question, Mr. Vice Chair, I don't do appropriations work. I mean, what I do again in this space is the agriculture work around the Farm Bill and the ag program work around the Farm Bill for the 1890 universities.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you again for your service and what you all are doing.
I'm sorry, it's Chip. Can you hear me?
We can, Chip. Thanks.
I apologize, but just a question. 50% of our student body on Pell Grants, and I'm trying to get at just thinking through the practical implications as you suggested, Paul, planning. What is the right now? Are we saying that those grants will not be provided to students that are currently enrolled? That money at present will not be provided to those students that are currently enrolled, and it will impact those that are applying in the upcoming year. I'm just trying to make sure I understand, you know, our responsibility as to what we need to think through. Can you, if I missed it, I apologize, but I'm just trying to understand that.
Yeah, there have been no changes to the Pell Grant program right now. But when you're closing down a department or proposing to close down a department as the executive order from last week, Thursday, March 20th said, to the maximum ability applicable under the law, there's going to be a lot of disruption when you are reducing employment in the financial aid office at the Department of Education. The administration is proposing to move all of the loan programs from the Department of Education to the Small Business Administration. Again, you need expertise to run these programs. The federal government has a loan portfolio for students in higher ed of $1.6 trillion. That's the size of Wells Fargo Bank. Wells Fargo has 200,000 employees. The Department of Education had 1,500 people running that program. And again, we're reducing the size of the program. I think, again, where the threats are going to be to institutions like this is when they look at not just the Pell Grants, but the Parent Plus program and or other loan programs that students and their parents rely on to make up the difference even when you get a Pell Grant. I cannot see Congress doing anything that would allow this administration to take away Pell Grants, because again, it's not just our university, it's every university in the country has Pell Grant students. I think the threat there is the disruption of, if folks don't get the money on time, you all have bills to pay, you have salaries to meet. I don't think right now, Chip, you have a threat of that program being eliminated or going away. You have a threat of folks not understanding how much money they're going to get for the fall of 2025. You have a threat of the other loan programs not being able to be functioned in the same way. So you have chaos where students may decide, I don't have the money and I can't go to school. So even though I got into Del State, I'm not going. That's not a good outcome for the university. That's not a good outcome for them. It's not a good outcome for anybody, but that's the threat right now. The same thing with the research. I mean, any funding, I mean, you can get a letter tomorrow saying your funding is frozen. You don't really have a recourse. And that's the problem and the moment that we are in, where again, the collectiveness of even the HBCUs, when they tried to shut down a program at the Department of Agriculture that was a scholars program, of which Del State, I think, had 1890 scholars who got full tuition, job opportunities in the summer at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That program was frozen immediately upon the administration coming in because it fit under this rubric in their minds of DEI. And it was quietly restarted after one member of Congress, Congresswoman Alma Adams from North Carolina, which this university has given an honorary doctorate to a few years ago. And if any of you visit her office, she's got a Del State blanket on her couch. She's very fond of President Allen. She put out a statement and said she was appalled at the fact that this program for students, scholarships, workforce, job opportunities were eliminated by fiat. And the key to that story getting some legs was it got in the Reuters newspaper, the Reuters Newswire, and went all over the world. And people were able to understand, like, okay, wait a minute. You got kids who are in college who get scholarships who could work at the Department of Agriculture, and the program just was stopped, that had been in place for 33 years. So it wasn't a new program. It was started in 1992. My President Bush, George H.W. Bush. People could grasp that very quickly. I think the administration saw that that was a problem and they reinstated it. But it was also because they were like, the HBCUs are getting ready to rise up and say, why? How is it that our scholarship program was the first one that got targeted and got eliminated? But it was a collectiveness in them knowing that there's 100 of them that there are. And people couldn't distinguish between the 1890s and all the HBCUs, but they just said, this is not a fight we want to start right now. Not to say they won't come back and start it again, but again, all that stuff we now know we have to be prepared for. Chip, a long answer to your short question, but happy to follow up, happy to be in touch. And thank you all again for inviting me to join you today, and best of luck, and thank you for your service to the university.
Thank you, Paul. I do want to point out a couple of things. One, you can tell that at least from a lobbying standpoint, we're in good hands, and he's home, so he takes special care of Delaware State. So in addition to the Council of 1890 for the board, we're also very affiliated, as you know, with Thurgood Marshall College Fund, which is led by a person who has a very special Del State connection too. He is working directly with the White House. Next week, there'll be a TMCF fly-in. It is likely that we'll certainly be talking to our respective congressional delegation there, but there may be an executive order specific to HBCUs coming down the pike that TMCF is helping craft. That is not to give anybody here any comfort, safe to say that they are working pretty diligently in attempting to ring fence the HBCUs in particular. And then I also serve on the President's Alliance on Higher Education Immigration, which is very important too. There are only 9 HBCUs in that alliance. And I think you all know that we have a significant dreamer population that also needs to be protected and supported. I told the chairman, I guess it was last week, that we're going to start making dreamers a part of our enterprise risk. role, because we're going to have to make sure that they are continued to be protected and prepared. But the Alliance provides us good comfort in that regard. And to Vice Chairman Griffiths, I raise these because these are the highest priority. But as I said, I turn on CNN intentionally to see what is happening every day, and are trying to ring fence that. That $45 million research portfolio, about $12.5 million of that is at risk now because it is specific to research projects that disproportionately look at underrepresentation in minority communities. We have not gotten any letters, but I wanted to raise it for you for your consideration. Vice Chair Griffiths.
Just a question on the research stuff. The federal government is issuing us a grant to perform research on some subject, whatever the subject is. Well, by freezing the money or taking the money away, are they also telling us whatever that project was, we don't want it anymore? Is that what they're doing? And so whatever the research, the purpose of the research was, has gone away, or they've made it go away, and they're freezing the money. And you get a letter that says that.
Yeah, I will say, I want to be thoughtful in my response here, because I don't think they think that hard about the implications.
I agree with that.
But de facto, that is exactly what they're saying.
Mr. President.
Yes.
I think it should be pointed out that the good news is, I think we have some muscle memory as it relates to FAFSA.
Yep.
And the delays and FAFSA and such, but we had, obviously, we were preconditioned for that. We were told, I believe, right?
That's right.
We were told that was coming down the pike, the changes and so forth. So we have some muscle memory when it comes to being able to prepare for or make contingencies, right? And our CFO was at the front of that. So we feel good about that. To Trustee Griffith's point, it's just when we don't know, we don't know. So you can't scenario plan, like Paul said. And but with respect to the FAFSA, here's my point. You walk down Market Street in Wilmington, and BCAD is no longer there. And that's the College of Art and Design.
Yep.
And that was FAFSA. That was just FAFSA delays, and they're no longer there. So we're mindful. We're glad we have some muscle memory. If we know, we can prepare. If we don't, that's the concern.
And I think that's a well said, Mr. Chairman. The other thing I'd tell you all is that we have been preparing, right? So we do have a strategic plan. We've thought about our big rocks. We've had this growth, and I've thought about our business model. So don't forget, we have a roadmap.
Yep.
And that roadmap, I think, has been helpful to us, and the board digging in on what that means for all of us every day has been important too. So I just wanted to add that as a refresher. And the profile is important too. So we've had good exposure, which I think leads to good growth. So just a couple of initiatives that I think we have to even uplift more that I've highlighted here. You can see images from our scholarship ball, which Dr. Haley is very involved in. $4 million more than we've raised ever in the history of the ball. We'll do more next year. The Black Male Leadership Conference, which doesn't raise any money, but suggests that we are very consistent as to who we are and who we serve. So making sure that we have that kind of level of exposure both here in Delaware and across the country leads to good results. So you heard Paul talk a little bit about state funding and the percentage of allocation that we get from the state, both on the operating and the capital side. Just note the bar is going in the right direction. And I've already asked for 10% more on the operating side and about 50% more on the capital side. So when you think about where you can be helpful, it's particularly with the members of the Delaware General Assembly that represent your interests. Why is this important? You've heard me say it many times, 47 public HBCUs. Delaware State is number 40 as it relates to percent allocation from the state, even though we're the third highest rated public HBCU in the country. And I've told that story to the Delaware General Assembly, and I think they are getting it. So we'll see what that portends for this session of the season. Yes.
I know it's maybe too early or premature to say this, but if you get a letter tomorrow and some funding that come into Delaware State is being frozen,
yep.
Are you going to call an emergency meeting of the board? Are you going to try to look ahead to where the money's going to come from? If we
First of all, I would do that.
I'm sorry.
I would do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. you know, from a procedural standpoint, what we're gonna do if you get a letter or the chairman gets a letter tomorrow,
Yeah,
funding is going away, what happens?
let me just say this, because the chairman would actually do that. I know Melissa is chomping at the bit, I imagine. Just know that our funding has slowed already, right? So while that funding hasn't gone away, getting some of that award to the university is slower now than it has been in a long, long time. So we're waiting with bated breath on that score. Melissa sent me an email over the weekend about the grants that particularly relate to research around disproportionate research for people of color. And some universities, more than a few, have already gotten that funding pulled. We haven't received that letter yet. Am I right, Melissa? We have not received that letter yet, but I am telling you, those things are at risk. So will we pull the board together? I'm sure the chairman will do that. But it really is about thinking about what that portends for the future. And to be frank, friends, that's why we pushed very hard on our value proposition and pricing the last couple of years. That's why we developed a treasury management portfolio that includes reserves in a much different way than we had before. That's why we're trying to build our endowment for times like these. And we are certainly in times like this. There'll be more to come on that score as well. Melissa, did you want to add anything? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so the grant, there's that from NIH that funds health disparities. It's the largest one that's been threatened so far. So it's about $4 million a year. And last Friday, there was a Friday afternoon massacre, and 7 of the 24 programs that have been funded by that NIH has funded received termination letters on Friday afternoon saying your funding is terminated as of today. So, so I notified Tony and John Starkey, but also we talked with our, this is a very large grant. We have, 25 people working on it. So we've had a strategy session. The first thing I said, spend your money. We don't know how long we're going to have this grant, spend your money. And then met with some of the leadership to kind of strategize about what we would do. 9 people would pretty much, the money that pays their salary would be gone. So we'd have to find a way to, there would be ways to give them a severance and perhaps move them into other positions on campus. So we have been strategizing about it already because that seems to be our most vulnerable grant. Although some folks at NIH, our program officer at NIH has said, if it wasn't cut in that round, we're probably okay. We hope they know what they're talking about. They may not.
Vice Chair Griffiths.
Going back to my earlier point about the reason for the grant, whatever it was the federal government wanted us to do, and they're saying now, for whatever reason, right or wrong, they're not going to do whatever that thing was. So does that free up money? You see where I'm going with this?
No, because that was what the grant was for. So it funds, so that grant funds about 13 projects on our campus that are all related to health disparities in one way or another. Now, if that grant goes away, that means, as far as NIH is concerned, the project is over, but that actually means we could put the proposal back together and submit for funding again. And that's almost certainly, if it happens that we don't get this, that this grant is terminated. That's the other thing I'm thinking about is, okay, that would set us back for a year or two, but these are really good people doing really good work. Within a year or two, we would be able to put in, very soon, within 6 months, we'd start putting in more grants and eventually we'd get more funding, because health disparities are real things and they're really important, and solving health disparities is in the interest of the government. It saves us money, it saves the government money. It's not sensible that these things should be eliminated. And so pendulum will swing and come around, and we'll be ready if we do lose these funds.
Okay. So what else do we do? Diversifying our portfolio is pretty important. That's why we've been pretty dogged relative to EHBCU. I'm happy to report that we have signed partnership agreements with Southern, which is the only HBCU that is a system. We have a partnership with Penn Lewis College, which is the only design HBCU in the country. have a signed partnership agreement with Alabama State University and probably 6 additional prospects for EHBCU. What's the stated return in 5 years? We're going to turn $22 million to the EHBCU consortium and have increased our portfolio over those campuses to about 3,500 in total. This is the landing page. So we are incorporated subsidiary, have our landing page. Will actually launch sometime in mid-May relative to our marketing platform. And then we'll launch our current program offerings in the fall. I feel very, very good about where we are. A lot of kudos to Terry Jeffries, who's not here, but is our EHBCU coordinator, Dr. McLemore, Mr. Benatti, who are the executive sponsors, and Kanisha Ringgold, who's been incredible in that regard. Mr. Ridgway, Trustee Ridgway is going to spend a little time talking to you about EHBCU now, but I wanted to give you a sense holistically as to where we've been, and thanks to your support, we are on schedule and meeting our milestones. Trustee Ridgway.
Well, thank you, Dr. Allen, and good afternoon, everyone. I really should have came before Dr. Allen because my slides don't look nowhere near as pretty. My class is about to enter its 50th year anniversary this year, 2025. But let's talk about EHBCU for a little bit. You know, again, I need a mic. I need to stand up here. See, I didn't practice that. I've been retired. Like I said, I had to come out of time at work on my presentation skills. So give me a little bit of grace. Let me share a little bit about this. In December of 24, at the board retreat, you recall, we approved the school to move forward with EHBCU. At that time, we talked about working with a consortium that, with multiple universities. And basically, they was going to offer certified and accredited courses, primarily to non-traditional students, and Delaware State would be at the hub. So Dr. Allen, if you want to share a little bit about the hub, but I'll tell you the hub, if you want to look at it, is the network control center for the whole consortium. They keep things moving. They're like your GPS. They keep the programs in flow. They work and coordinate with the schools to make sure we have the right strategies in place. The launch that was going to take place in September, you're looking at having 580 students offering courses to the founding universities at that time. And the founding universities was Delaware State University, Alabama, Florida A&M, Pensacola Lewis College out of Detroit. And you know, at that time, we felt the student enrollment would be forecast to increase to 3,500 by 2029 to 2030. And basically, it was going to be supported by the plan was they had 1 HBC per year. By the time year 5, it was supported. The startup cost was funded by a 5-year grant. That 5-year grant is still secure, $7.5 million by Blue Meridian. By year 5, the revenue generated from students would equal $22 million, would be enough to self-fund the program going forward. Of that $22 million, Delaware State was forecasted to earn $14 million gross, after expenses, $12 million net. At that time, we wanted to have an online program manager. Program manager would be someone who would help with the strategy, help with the program identification, help with marketing and tracking and reporting. And we're working with Kaplan. I think the president said that those agreements have already been set. But what happened, our current state would be that Florida A&M, which is one of the founding members for change in leadership and other internal strategies, decided to withdraw. Negotiation with Kaplan, the online program manager, was halted and a new RFP was sent. And as Dr. Allen said, they've already identified one and the agreement has been signed. So the strategy for course offerings in phase 1 of the initial launch was changed to focus on non-degree certificate programs offered at 350 students and certificates. It'll be expanded to the degree programs in the spring of 2026. Blue Meridian remains committed to provide funding, 7.5 to cover the first 5 years. The program, the consortium, is still on target to be self-funded by 2029, 2030. I'll stop there for a second, see if there's any questions before I move forward. Yes, Bernadette.
Drove the strategy to change to non-degree certificate program?
Yes, Mr. Allen, you can help me on that.
It's not a change, it's a reversal. So we were going to start with degree programs in the fall. But when we changed the OPMs, we wanted to go a little slower on that. So the certificate programs will start in the fall and the degree programs will start in the spring. We just reversed the order.
And Bernadette, to be honest, for me personally, when you implement a strategy, I always had when I used to do TQM, my favorite line was go slow to go fast, build a strong foundation, get it up and running. You'll be able to tweak it, make adjustments along the way. Then you can move forward with running the program full throttle. What you really want to look at here is that in year 5, the program is still going to be self-sustaining. And the program is still going to have the full array of course offerings that the ultimate goal was. So the go forward plan, year 1, focus on a successful launch in September. That's still the plan. That's your ultimate goal. Identify and select the OPM. That's already been done. Establish and finalize legal agreements to define a consortium's operational model. You said that agreement has been done, it's been shared. Develop and launch a comprehensive brand marketing strategy. And that's still in motion, but it's set to move forward in alignment with rolling out the program. Develop and publish an EHBCU website and application portal. I think you saw a picture of that on the previous slide than my slide. DSU, recruit and onboard 3 consortium staff members. And this is basically how the hub's gonna function. You're looking at executive director, business development officers, student advisor, student success coaches, enrollment director, instructional designers, and career counselors. You want to move forward with aligned students and mission workflows with the OPM systems and streamline the process. And when you say streamline the process, what you want to think here is a process of ongoing improvement, continuous improvement. You always want to look and review at different phases of the program and how can we make it much more efficient. Enroll the first cohort of EHBCU students with DSU into specific programs. Okay. Continue on with our go forward plan. You want to instill fiscal and operational discipline to meet our objectives. We're still on plan for the fall and become financially fully independent by 2029. So, and I know we talked earlier about things that was in flight. This grant is secured. So there's no concern, in case that thought's out there, about losing that funds. Those funds are there. So they're going to be there. By 2029 academic year, the consortium expects to enroll 3,550 students, with 2,500 of them being DSU students. Yes.
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
At this beginning, since we flipped the strategy, we now have certificates being really focused. Will they be credit bearing certificates?
Okay. These would be our recommendations. Really no actions for board approval. It's already been approved. We approved it in December. We should continue to move forward with the support of EHBCU consortium. We showed it there, the value of it. It makes sense to do. One of the things that we want to really focus on is, unknown threats and how do we move forward and how do we prepare? How do we offer an array of programs to students? And this is one of the ways we do it. The program is funded for 5 years from Blue Meridian, shared that, and the initial forecast that it'd be self-sustaining. And that's it. So let me just share one thing. And I meant to start off my comments with, we were talking earlier before the board meeting started, and we were saying, what would be a good scripture? You don't mind me going down that path. But I thought of one, but I changed it. And I'm going to go back and share with you. And just remember, and it's in Psalms. It says, where there's no vision, we perish. So if we don't make strategic changes to the way that we offer our array of education to our students, we too will perish. That's all I have. Thanks. Any questions before I go? Sorry.
Any questions, anyone?
Yeah.
How long have you been retired?
6 years.
Believe that.
Yeah. March 31st, 5 o'clock. 6 years. I had to brush off my retirement skills. I was laying in the house watching ESPN.
Thank you, sir.
Let me just remind the board that during our retreat, our winter retreat, this was really a recommendation from Artist Cowan that we would have the board engage in understanding the risk model, which is very good for certainly our staff. So thank you, Trustee Ridgway, for what you were able to do. So responsible growth, right? Second, student first culture. I'm still can't believe this number. So Dr. McLemore, how many applications did we have at this time last year?
6,300.
6,300
Yes.
applications for admission to Delaware State?
Yes.
And how many do we have as of today?
As of this morning, give you a strong straight number. As of this morning, last year this time, we had 6,411 on this date. Today, we have 19,824.
So first of all, give a big round of applause to Dr. McLemore. Yes.
How many of them are in state? Right now, in state, last year was 1,653. Today, 1,707. Out of state last year was 4,680. This year, 17,506.
So Dr. McLemore, if you would come up to the mic for a second. This actually came out of transformation. So at some point I'll have the CEO of Blue Meridian come speak to the board because he started with us 5 years ago. I'll get you 1 second, Vice Chair Griffiths, and helped us with the Wesley acquisition, as you know, but also set the path for transformation for us and had our entire executive team working through all the models we needed to be successful and sustain ourselves long term. One of which was opening up more avenues to make it easier for students to apply to Delaware State University. And it was really because of Tony Boyle and Dr. McLemore's great leadership that we opened ourselves to two really big venues that have given us significant momentum. One is the Common App, which I know many of you know. One is the Black Common App, which is not insignificant as well, that has really provided strong power for us. So to have this level of volume to make good decisions about who we bring at the university is really forcing us to rethink how we think about who comes to the university, what our portfolio mix is along those lines, and to your point around overall sustaining university long-term, where we can adjust triggers appropriately to make sure that we have the right value proposition and the pricing model. Vice Chair Griffiths.
Are we still following your first proposal about 10,000 students? Or is that number out the window now and we're going?
I am not putting that number out the window because I want to be able to look you in the eye. So it is 10,000.
We're still sticking with 10,000.
We are.
The board was told.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I'm almost afraid to ask, but at 19,000, what kind of cost are we talking about?
What kind of 19,000 applications?
Well, I mean, so you're not even considering having all these people actually join us. These are just applications.
Those are just applications. We have a bigger pool to pull from based on our strategic plan, which includes a steady growth to 10,000 by 2030.
But now that we've reached our goal so quickly.
We haven't reached our goal. We're at 6,300 students.
Yeah.
Our goal is to have 10,000 students by 2030. This is just applications to Delaware State.
Okay, so we should not read into this that we're going to the 10,000 tomorrow. I mean.
No.
That's not what.
No. If I ever told you that I would let every person that applied to Delaware State to come to Delaware State, I would expect a resignation letter or a termination letter immediately. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You got it. Dr. McLemore, want to talk a little bit about your process?
Sure. Good afternoon. What we realized, there was a letter standing in the midst of us being amazing. We always yell, somebody say DSU. And when it was time for students to apply to us, they didn't understand that DESU was the website. So we had to take that into consideration. So when students really wanted to have access to us, we had one platform. So we wanted to see how do we expand access and opportunity for students to apply to us. So we put ourselves on the Common App, which were a lot of PWIs housed that application. And there were very few minimum HBCUs who took advantage of that, which gave us a huge platform to move forward. And then we also put ourselves on the Common Black College app, where students have the opportunity to engage with at least 67 HBCUs, and then they do a hand raiser of the top 4 institutions that they would like to attend. And so fortunate enough that the brand has been raised under the leadership of not only Dr. Mashu, Dr. Tony Allen throughout the years of me being here as well. This brand and all these amazing academic programs are definitely were in reach of these students. So we've had the opportunity to have some amazing students like Sydney Brown, that's from the Midnight Golf program. And one thing she did not highlight right now is she's doing an intern at MIT. And she does a presentation at, I think, May 11th. So the academic programs that we have here are far beyond what some of our counterparts have. A lot of HBCUs are liberal arts, but we have some amazing programs, as we indicated, that we've been highlighting and profiling. And so these students across the nation, not only that, but globally, are really taking into consideration what we have to offer. And not to say less, when they come on campus, they are truly amazed. So I think that is what is raised to profile.
Dr. Mashu and then Trustee Stewart.
McLemore, could you just take 1 minute to describe or explain to us what the Common App is and how it actually works?
Yeah. So through the years, we probably never sat in a space where there's a market space where students would take the opportunity. A lot of times in our K-12, 9th through 12th grade, if you don't have the people telling you, what to access, you just don't know. So a lot of the PWIs set in the space of the Common App, where it's a common market where students can actually search up the name of an institution that they're looking for. It gives them a direct link to apply to the institution. So we had some thoughtful conversations to see how do we actually get on a platform like that, because it was, again, maybe 85 to 95% PWIs. So we had the opportunity to speak with a representative, get on that platform, and you'll be amazed at how diverse the pool is. Because again, it's not just about sports, it's the academic profiles that we have to offer. And I'll say this, it's a little different too when, of course, we have our Black and brown students who go to PWIs, but in turn, when we have a diverse pool coming here, it speaks volumes on the academic programs that we offer and the people that we have here that put our arms around students. So the Common App is definitely one of those marketplaces that we tapped into that allowed that to happen.
So in essence, the student can fill out one application one time and send that same application.
No, they fill out, so they go to the Common App and you type in any institution, and if you're a part of it, it gives you that link to direct access, and then you apply for that institution. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So one of the things that Common App did was allow kids to apply. And then you have this funny thing going on where you don't know how many they applied, or maybe you do on the Common App. Do we have to worry about now percent of kids that we admit, accept, that don't actually end up coming? Is that going to be an issue?
No, so that's what is considered as an enrollment melt, right? So over 15 years ago, students had the opportunity when they filled out the FAFSA to apply to 3 schools to put on the FAFSA. Around 2011, the federal government moved up to 10. So then enrollment people had the opportunity to, kind of navigate between out of the schools when they put that on the FAFSA. 2 years ago, they allowed students to put up to 20 institutions on the FAFSA, right? So you're looking at 19 schools in competition. So before they were even able to apply to certain schools, they were already identifying that I need at least 10 schools to have access and opportunity to. One of the most amazing things now, where we were last year, when we talk about applications, the FAFSAs are up over 50% as well. That is a key indicator that students are really taking you serious, because now they want to see what the financial aid package looked like from your institution in consideration. So if the applications were high, but the FAFSAs were low, they're simply just applying just to apply. If you ever see on social media where you have a student say they got accepted to 30 schools with $6 million in scholarships, but they already know which institution they're going to, here we have more students who are really trying to take us serious, especially when they fill us fill out the FAFSA and put us on. Then you have an indicator that they're really taking us serious. And then it's up to us to close.
So last year, because it'll be so interesting to compare to this year, what percentage of kids actually enrolled in the school with the accepted?
So let's say this, last year, if we had a population of 8,000 that applied, we only accepted 4,000, right? And out of that 4,000, you had, that time you may have had 1,800 that accepted. Between the 1,800, we had roughly around 1,500 between freshman and transfer. So you normally look at a 10 to 15% melt. And in between the time of a student being admitted to the institution, you may have other institutions like the state of Maryland who know they're probably losing in-state kids to an amazing institution like this and come right back and say, we got an extra $2,000 for you. So then in between that time, you have the melt. But then again, it's up for the institution to continuously engage that student, to have them understand that you're coming to the best place and we're wrapping our arms around you. So that reduces the melt.
The Common App, even though you still have to go to the specific university to apply, does it work where students can still just one time upload certain documents and the university can pull their documents from there? Or they have to submit everything to us directly, even if they're on the Common App?
Even if you're on the Common App, you have to apply to that institution and upload the documents.
Okay, so the biggest benefit to a student to have access to the Common App is that you can just search the school and find it.
Exactly. You can find it easier. Yep.
Quick question, Mike, the volume, I mean, did you have to make a lot of adjustments to handle that much volume? What impact did it have on you?
We did. All hands on deck with the team. So from data entry, the counselors, myself, but we understand the mission. So much is due as much is required. So as they were coming in, we knew it'd be a nice volume, but when they started coming in, it was like, all right, all hands on deck. And the great thing about it is we have a team that's grown through over the years, so it's not a high turnover. So we have a lot of employees in the area of enrollment who understand the goal, which is to get the best, brightest, and smartest students in here and give them access. So we do a lot of virtual events with the students. We have open house next Saturday, April 5th. Come down. We'll be here. We host Hornet Days every Friday, starting the last week in January, and up until then, we have Hornet Days, and we do it based off states. And we bring students to the campus to showcase and highlight what we have to offer here outside of just an application process.
Get to the Common App, but then another app for HBCUs specifically.
Common Black College App.
With that one, can you apply once and check off multiple schools and the app goes to all those schools? Like, I feel like I've heard where there is a process for you.
So the Common Black College App, that's an application process where you apply one time, you select the institution in which you want all your information to go to. And so here's the thing about that application. If you were a smart enrollment person, if they didn't select you as an institution, you have the opportunity to cross-reverse and recruit those students because they select the institution that they want to go to and all the information is submitted to you because they have the opportunity to apply. There are 67 schools on there, but they do a hand raise and say, this is the institution that I want my information to go to. But as a smart enrollment person, if they were not in your enrollment funnel, if you had the manpower and resources, you can try to recruit those students too, but you better have a great academic program in order to do that because you can offer a student a full ride in biology, but if they want to do nursing, you'll do them a disservice because if they get a full ride in biology, you graduate, it's still not giving you what you need because you're going to have to apply to somebody's clinicals. You may have a year prerequisites and then 2 years of clinicals. So you just took a student from 4 to 7 years. Here, what we have to offer when students apply to us, they know we have the major. So
with our applications going up, how are we balancing? So when I hate to say this out loud, but when I came to Del State, the reputation wasn't that great. It's kind of like everybody knows anybody can get into Del State. Unfortunately, that was kind of the thing. It doesn't matter what you got on your SAT, you'll get into Del State kind of thing. Thankfully, it's a lot more competitive now. But do we have a balance with the student who may not have that high SAT score, or that high school GPA, and how do we balance wanting the best and the brightest with let's give somebody a chance?
Great. So we don't forget the mission here while we're here to give students an opportunity and access. However, we have been tasked with to raise the profile.
Yeah.
So from the students that you see that's in front of you to the ones who even promote us on their own, these are high impactful students. So we are now an aggressive institution, but we haven't forgotten the mission that you may have a 2.5 student who may have came from a district that's way more aggressive than another school district, because a 4.0 at one high school may not be a 4.0 at another high school. So we keep that in mind when we're going through our selection process. But the overall agenda is to continuously raise the profile of our students. And we take those things in our consideration.
And Trustee Shockley, I would add this, because it'll probably come to the board at some point. We will need to look at our admission standards. You can get a 2.0 and come to Delaware State today. We are thinking through, should we raise that to by some level of basis points that kind of set the floor a little differently, but still provide enough access to our primary population. So we have not formed that recommendation for your consideration yet, but you can expect that we'll be going through that due diligence as well. Yeah.
One more notion too. We just had some administrators from Morgan State come, today's Thursday, come to visit Tuesday. They wanted to take a tour just to see how we do things because they understood that we are an aggressive competitor of theirs and we welcome them with open arms.
Okay, sit down.
You share everything, did you? You didn't give them the whole. I didn't give them the whole play. You didn't give them the whole play.
No intellectual property. Nothing proprietary.
All right. Your first foray to look at. Again, best still on student first culture. Remember, good exposure leads to good results. I'm sorry that Dr. Harrington isn't here, but I do want to continue to talk a bit about our federal funding with respect to research awards. It's not insignificant here. Those of you who knew Old Delaware State, we were not a research institution. And I think the likes of Dr. Michoud and Dr. DeLauder behind him, certainly Dr. Sessoms and Dr. Williams really began to set the precedent. And by the time we got to 2017 or so, we started to be really much more dramatic as a result in our growth. What has that led to? We have regained our R2 Carnegie classification. The Carnegie thank you. Carnegie classification is important for a number of reasons. If you want, to your point about trying to attract more dollars in a normal environment and more scholars and potentially more opportunities for undergraduate research opportunities, which HBCUs do better than any other set of institutions in the country. It is important that you have the right status. There are 3 classifications. R1 is the highest, R2 is the second, R3 is the third. As you know, only one HBCU has R1 status and they just got it. That's Howard University. Of the 101 HBCUs in the country, 13 are R2. So we're among that 13, and the rest are either not research universities or in the R3 category. So she just left, but Dr. Gilliam is obviously here, and any other academic scholars. I just want to say a big thank you for continuing this journey to make us research intensive. It's paying off in a big way. And then accountable customer experience. You heard this in the committee reports. What I can tell you is our first responder, first touch points are getting much better, particularly as it relates to call resolution and customer satisfaction. The team is working through CRM integration. It'll probably come to you as we approve the budget for FY26. What is still particularly red is our cross-function customer experience. So internal to the organization is where we need to get much better, but we've made some reasonable progress here as well, and we'll continue to do so. And then 2 fun facts, and I'm out. Coach Collick was just featured recently on Coast TV. I just wanted to show a clip of this amazing man's legacy.
Bill Collick has seen a lot in his life. In Lewis, he saw school segregation ended. He went on to become a successful college and high school football coach. And as Matt Pensick shows us in this week's Coastal Connections, even in his 70s, he's still working to bring people together.
People lived.
Spend a few minutes walking the
On the
streets
east
of
side and
Lewis
most
with Bill Colick, and you'll
blacks on the
likely
west.
get a history lesson.
This was St. Paul's United Methodist Church. This is a large part of the Manhattan fishing industry. This is a Friendship Baptist Church, and Reverend George Edwards was the pastor. You're coming up on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Way, and it's Reverend George Edwards' vision of this street.
While serving as a member of Lewis's African American Heritage Commission, Colick helped in getting this road named as Martin Luther King Jr. Way. It has long been a key pathway in the city. Colick views the road not as a line that separated, but one that brought the community together.
Some people might have thought that most Caucasian people lived on the east side and most blacks on the west side, and maybe it was the divider. But actually, with Dr. King and with the Reverend Edwards, what he saw that what America could be. People coming together, working together with each other.
About a block to the east, a symbol of an era in Lewis that is gone but not forgotten. The large fishing reel, the fishing business managed by the mayor of the city at the time, Otis Smith.
It's, as you see, it's pretty big and labor intense. At that time, he had African Americans and Caucasian people working together. He had gone to one of the lending institutions here and talked about lending money to colored people. I'm going to pay a livable wage, and I'm going to give bonuses, and they'll be able to buy land and those things.
A local historical resource. Colick is also a legendary figure in Delaware sports history.
Coach Bill Colick has done a fine job.
Winning over 62% of his games during his 12 seasons as head coach at Delaware State.
And I'm just overjoyed to have had the opportunity to be able to had just a connection with those young men, and we were very fortunate that we had some success.
Success on the field as a coach, fostering success in the classroom in his current role as a member of the Cape Henlopen School Board. And then there is his volunteer efforts in the community, like work with Habitat for Humanity. Bill Colick has made putting other people first while serving the first town in the first state. For Coastal Connection, I'm Matt Pensick.
As you see, it's pretty big.
Just so you know, Coach Colick did not send me that. University Secretary Tammy Stoner did. So as I close, excuse me, I want to say it is quite a privilege to be the president of Delaware State University. The dream of a lifetime for me and my family. And it has a lot to do with the people that I work with every day. And that, I mean, all those people, people who clean our offices, to some of the greatest professors in the country, to some very quality administrators, and certainly all of you. So I do want to say thank you for an opportunity to continue to serve. I take it very, very seriously, and believe that Delaware State is at a place that regardless of what's happening, we're preparing for a really bright future in a way that distinguishes us in the marketplace for generations to come. So thank you for the opportunity. And I'll close with this. As I said, the people I get to work with, I find amazing. And when we lost our basketball coach several years ago, I don't normally do this, but I made a personal call to Coach Waterman and said, I'd like you to make sure that you apply. He said, I've applied 3 times already. And I said, you didn't get an interview? He said, no. And I said, given who you are, what you've done for high school basketball in Delaware, and where I believe we're trying to take this university, you'd be a very good person, not just for the basketball team, but for the university overall. And he has shown himself to be just that. I will not talk about record or basketball philosophy. I will just tell you this. He was a finalist for the Skip Prosner Award. That is about integrity, coaching integrity and character. And Stan, I just wanted to say thank you for taking on the challenge and for bringing everything that is Stan Waterman to this wonderful university of ours. And with that, I end the longest report in Tony Allen's.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep my report to just from the 2 minutes. But before I turn it to our CLA partners, who will talk about fiscal year 24 audited statements. I just want to give you a little bit of historical perspective on the progress that we have made. Before I do that, I really want to thank the finance team who worked hard and helping with this progress, especially our controller, Dan Thompson. What you can see, I only have 2 slides. So the first one with the colors, as I shared with the audit committee, is we want to see more green, less orange, pink, or red in there. But this will give you appreciation of what the trend that we have been experiencing here from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 24. And you can see on your left, the list of findings, which is a mixture of weaknesses and deficiencies that have been flagged by CLA in previous years, and how we have worked to clean up systemically some of those issues and bring the progress that you will hear about. By no means we are out of the woods. You will hear that we still have some issues that we are working on, and we are putting plans to tackle as we speak some of these issues that we're facing. But I'm really proud of the team, especially on some of the items. And if I have to pick my favorite, and I believe some of you who have been on the board favorite, which is travel and procurement card. And this is year 2, where we will not be talking about travel and procurement card.
Loud and clear.
So the first slide gives you the qualitative progress. This one is more of the quantitative progress, as you can see, coming out of COVID, which has really put a dent on all organizations. You can see there as 21, where we ended up with 8 findings. And that was my first year on the job, August 2021. And you can see, with the help of the team, finance specifically, but also all the DSU community, we were able to reduce that year after year from the 8 to the 5 to the 3 to the 2 for this year. So again, there is still progress to be made, but I want you to have the historical perspective before we focus specifically on the 2024 with the CLA team.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Johns. For those of you I haven't met, for those of you I have, it's great to be back again. And I'm joined by Megan Asklar, who is the manager on the engagement. And we're going to do our best to get everyone back on time here. So if you do have any questions, please just wave your hands and we'd be happy to address any questions anyone may have. What were we engaged to do? As independent auditors, we were engaged to come in after management has closed the books and prepared the financial statements and perform tests to make sure those books are in accordance with generally accepted accounting standards, and that we do also have a responsibility for fraud to ensure material fraud hasn't occurred at the university. As part of that process, we look at the internal control structure at the university. However, we do not express an opinion on internal controls. That does not occur during a financial statement audit. However, when we're going through the course of our audit, if we note any deficiencies, as Mr. Benedi alluded to, we are required to report them to this group. That would be a material weakness, which we define as the controls are either not in place or not operating to prevent material error from occurring, or a significant deficiency, which is less severe than a material weakness, yet important enough for this group to consider. We're also engaged to do your federal single audit. That's the audit of major federal programs. That is due on Monday, and we will meet that deadline. We are probably going to submit that tomorrow, so on time. I would like to just give before I give the microphone to Megan, a brief history. You know, when we started, just speaking to the financial statement audit, the state has deadlines because we're a component unit of the state. They need the university's information to get their report out. And we have deadlines related to our public bonds. They're called continuing disclosure requirements. And when we began as your auditors, those deadlines weren't met. And there were a lot of audit adjustments that were required. And it just pushed back the time frame, caused a lot of stress. I remember one year we had to, Dr. Allen and I had to go to Wilmington to meet with the state and talk to them. And we fast forward to today, the process is much improved. Now, while there is still room for improvements, as Mr. Benedy alluded to, there has been significant improvement. So sometimes that gets lost when we're going through the deficiencies, that from an outsider's perspective, as an independent auditor's perspective, there has been significant improvement in the audit process over the years. And I'm going to turn it over to Megan to briefly go over what we did.
You can hold that. Just to give everyone a little bit of an overview on our audit process, it does span quite a few months that we spend with Dan and his team working through the process. We do take a risk-based approach. So that means while there's a lot of transactions and numbers flowing through the general ledger and that you see on those financial statements, we're not looking at every single one. We look at areas that present the most risk to the financial statements. They are listed, some examples of higher risk areas on this slide here, and I won't go into every single one of them in the essence of time. But just want to call out one being the internal controls. So that's one area Mike had mentioned, while we don't express an opinion on, we do get an update from management each year on any changes that could have taken place in internal control, maybe changes in processes or policies, as that really drives the process for the audit and making sure we understand how things function at the university. The other area I want to call out that's actually not on here, that's built into this process also, is IT. So we do bring IT folks from CLA in to work with Mr. McMillan and his team to look at the process around the general controls for IT. So we're not, doing vulnerability testing or penetration testing or trying to do ethical hacking. We're merely looking at the internal controls for the IT systems. The fun slide, our opinion on the financial statements. We are issuing an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can give as external auditors. Mike had mentioned that we do have a material weakness and some significant deficiencies noted, which he'll highlight in a couple slides from now.
And that's the highest level of assurance we can provide. That's what's referred to as a clean opinion.
Governance communications, these are communications that we are required to go over as a part of our auditing standards. These are also in the form of a formal letter, which has been reviewed with the Finance Committee. Mike had mentioned our purpose is to communicate all audit results to governance, which is what we're doing here today. In terms of the audit process, no changes in scope. So what was listed in our SOW or engagement letter, what we communicated we would do is what we set out and did do. We had no new accounting standards this year, so I know Dan and his team was probably relieved for that. Nothing to implement, no significant changes to the financial statements as a result. No difficulties encountered, no disagreements with management, and no other consultations with other independent accountants, which is basically shopping for a second opinion. There are some estimates in the financial statement. We do review those each year, perform some procedures to make sure we're comfortable with those estimates, as there's some methodology that goes into building out those estimates. And then any other uncorrected adjustments Mike will discuss in a moment. And then we do have a rep letter back, which has been signed, sealed, and delivered for the financial statement audit. And then the single audit will be coming tomorrow.
We're required to mention the estimates because there are estimates that could change materially based on future facts and circumstances and economic conditions. The internal control matters. The first is a material weakness, and this is related to the financial reporting process. We were on time. We met the deadlines I referred to earlier. However, when you look at what a black and white audit should be, the book should be closed. We should come in and perform tests and issue our report. The books weren't completely closed when we started the audit, which required significant adjustments by management. They were still closing, which caused us to then have to take into account those adjustments, redo our materialities, make sure our scopes didn't change. And as a result, internal controls is not just preventing something from occurring, it's timely preventing something from occurring. And we feel there's just enough room for improvement that we classified this as a material weakness, that the timing needs to be improved. A formal close process is highly recommended with responsibilities, reviewers, and timelines to make sure that the financial information is being closed at an interim and year-end basis. And that makes sure that this group gets accurate financial information to make your decisions. The significant deficiency was purely the result of an error we found when we were testing revenue. There was a $6.8 million audit adjustment related to the American Rescue Plan grant. that had not been recorded appropriately in the books and records. So that was an audit adjustment based on our tests. And because the control didn't prevent that from occurring, that's why it has to be reported as a significant deficiency and the dollar amount involved. Other deficiencies, these are sometimes commonly referred to as management comments, not necessarily something that always needs to be reported to governance, but we feel like you may want to know, so we just talk about them. The first is the capital asset roll forward. The subledgers that account for your capital assets, your buildings, your equipment, and related depreciation expense. The subledgers didn't agree to the general ledger by a little over $1 million, so we have a past audit adjustment related to that. It relates to beginning balances. We had a similar comment and past adjustment last year, and we just recommend that be investigated and adjusted as needed. You have to report employee census data to the plans that the employees participate in for retirement benefits or pension benefits. What the state plans do, or each year they calculate a liability and they allocate it to all the individual entities that participate in the plans, and we pick up that liability on the university's books and records. But the actuaries need census data to make that calculation. So that those are things such as age, years of employment, sex, those kind of things. So they can use their charts and software to make an accurate liability calculation. We noticed that in a handful of the samples we made, the census data didn't agree to the supporting HR files. So our recommendation is to just make sure we're updating those files and keeping it current and accurate. Student accounts receivable. This comment is a repeat comment, and it's on the collections process that gross number, the gross amount of student receivables continues to increase each year. So some attention may want to be given to looking at that collections process and making sure it's operating as it should. Unsupported balances, this goes to the next slide in the uncorrected audit adjustment category. There was an unsupported liability. The name of the account was stale checks for $754,000. When we asked what this was or what the detail was that made up that account balance, supporting schedule could not be provided. There was another liability for 1.3 million called clearing accounts that with other clearing accounts throughout the general ledger should net to zero. It was off 1.3 million and that could not be supported. So we passed on those adjustments. We say they're potentially errors because they couldn't be supported. So we just recommend they be looked into, and if needed, the books and records be adjusted. The other uncorrected misstatement was related to a sample we made in the unearned grant revenue. You record unearned grant revenue when you receive cash from a grantor that you haven't made an allowable expenditure for yet, so you can't recognize that revenue. We had a few errors. They were all pretty minor, but when we do a sample, we have to project that error over the whole population to make sure there's not a bigger problem that needs to be dug into deeper. And that projection was 972,000. So management concluded, and we concurred that that's not material, but again, needs to be reported. And I talked about the $1.9 million capital asset difference.
Question.
Yes.
Is there going to be further investigation of where this money went?
We have to follow up in next year's audit. So
before that,
not from CLA's side, but management would be responsible for looking into that. We can be brought in to do some procedures, but right now we're just engaged to do the annual audit.
Yes. So just going back to some of the deficiencies that were mentioned in this slide, the big one for us is the students' account revenue receivables. So that one was the subject of the conversation, if you recall, on the executive session, where we have a game plan. I will be happy to further discuss that one, either on the executive session or one-on-one. The still check one, which is related to some of these balances that we have, is a work that Mr. Thompson and Carol Boyer-Rienzi from our students' accounts have recruited a consultant, and I think they have wrapped up that work. We're about to wrap up that work, which will clear some of these ones. When it comes to fixed asset, that's one that we are putting in the budget for next year to hire a fixed asset manager. which will help for this work, both on the single audit with the inventory of fixed asset, but also help us track and help account for the fixed asset.
In the essence of time, and probably a lot of people will cheer, we won't go over the new accounting standards, but management's well aware of them and the work they have to do next year and the years following to adopt those new accounting standards. We appreciate being here. We appreciate being your independent auditors. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Johns or Megan? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Okay, folks, if there are no questions, I think the full board is ready to consider a motion to accept the report of our external audit partners from CLA.
I make a motion that we accept the audit from CLA.
I second.
Very good. The motion has been entered and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against?
No,
Is that a no vote?
that's a no vote.
Understood. Okay, the motion carries. Next, we have the Operations Committee and Mr. Benatti, I'm sorry, Bernadette Watley, the chair, and I think Mr. Benatti is going to provide in finance update.
So you just want us to go over the key highlights or the spirit of time?
Please, Anas, you want to provide the financial?
Yes. Well, good afternoon again. So I will go. So the presentation today will be just to brief you on the Q2 financial performance. So that's the first 6 months of the fiscal year from July 1 all the way until December. I will also touch on the cash position as of, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, and then talk about the forecast both on the budget, how we think we will end the year, and on the cash forecast between now and 6:30. Just as a highlight for the Q2, so in terms of dollars compared to last year, we are up on the revenue. It's mainly due to the state's allocation, as you recall, due to collective advocacy, we were up 7.5 on our operations for the state allocation. On terms of specifically the billed revenues when it comes to our core service, which is our tuition fees and auxiliary room and board, we are on pace to fiscal year 25 year to date to fiscal year 24 as of Q2. And we are actually higher on collection compared to last year. We are about $4 million high on collection. And I will go through those details in the next slides. On the expense side, we are almost flat on dollars, but because the budget is higher, we are lower on percentages. So as of Q2, we were at 46%. Last year, same time frame, we were at 51%. Increase in expenses was mainly due to salary and benefits. If you recall, there were, I believe, 4 CBAs that were approved by the board last year, and all of them have retroactive pay. With one of them, faculty had 2 years of retroactive pay. So that was a big hit on the cash flow, which we expected, and we had to book it during Q1 of this fiscal year.
Question.
Yes.
And so the increase in the expenses was not due to an increase in enrollment? I'm asking.
No, it was mostly driven by the CBA increases in our for our workforce.
Payments associated with the collective bargaining agreements we struck last year.
Yeah.
We have more students, that's why. We've talked about this before in terms of as each year passes and as we creep closer and closer to 10,000, there's more cost. There's a dollar sign on each one of those new students.
Vice Chair Griffiths, we actually have less students this year. We're about 2% down, so you're for less. So it's not an increase in students.
And those particular expenses were related directly to the passage of the CBAs we passed last year with the 4 years.
Yeah. And I'll go through the different categories of expenses, but even in past years, we have managed to stay flat on our fixed costs. So we have grown the students either in non-traditional way, international or online, or the growth that has happened here in campus was within our fixed capacity. We did not have to open new housing, new academic classrooms that generate an increase.
We talked.
Yeah. So this is just a reminder on our budget that was approved by the board last June, which is around 178 million on both sides, the revenue and the expenses. As of Q2 again, this last December, this is how what we looked like in terms of revenue expenses. We were at about 87% of our revenues booked, which is normal. First 6 months is where we book most of our revenues with the fall and spring. On the expense side, we were about 46.3%, which is great. We're slightly lower than the 50% mark, even if we are 50% into the year with 6 months into the fiscal year. This is just putting fiscal year 24 versus fiscal year 24 versus fiscal year 25, both on the expense and the revenue. As you can see there, on the dollars, we are higher on the revenue. On the percentage, we are slightly lower, 86% or 87% compared to 90%, and I will show you why. And then, as I said, as I mentioned previously, on the expense side, we're almost flat, which makes it lower in percentages because your universe is bigger. Last year, our total budget was 156. This year is 178 million. So that's why our total expenses compared to budget, we are lower this year compared to last year. Then we're going to just do a little bit of a deep dive into the revenue side. And these are the different categories. As you can see, slightly lower on tuition and fees, which I will talk about because we actually looked into even beyond December. Auxiliaries, we were higher, 37 million to 34 million. The big increase overall was due to the state government allocation. As I mentioned, is a 7.5, which is almost was about, I think about 18% increase in our operations for the state allocation. You can see there the 48 versus the 36 million. So we looked at the tuition and fees, and it was a little bit of a red flag when I saw that we were lower in dollars. So we wanted to see what was going on. So what we did, instead of stopping at December 31st, we pulled the data all the way into March to see what has happened and if we have made up some of that ground. The bottom line is we did. We made up the ground that was lost when we pulled the data as of December. And what has told us is that some of our students that usually are booked and paid before the Christmas holidays, where some of them came to us after the Christmas holidays and they were booked and paid. So as you can see here, overall, we are slightly lower on the tuition and fees, but higher on the housing and meals, which put us right where we should be, which is the 115 million, as you see there, versus the 114 million. So overall, we are higher, about 200,000 year over year as of March 26 to 25 of last year.
Was the state increase characterized as a one-time increase, or do you have an expectation in future budget years the state's going to do this again?
Yes. So the state increase of 7.5 million, if you recall, we asked for 15 million. They provide us with 7.5 million. 5 million was baked into our budget. We don't have to defend, and it's already in this year's budget. 2.5 was through grant and aid, and it was a one-time operational.
That was one time.
Yes. However, when we came back this year, we asked for 10 million, including making the 2.5 million permanent. Right before Governor Carney left office, he issued a budget that made the 2.5 million permanent and gave us another recommendation of 2.5 million. So as of now, with just looking at the previous governor budget that was issued, not looking at what was announced today, we're still working through the details. We gained a 2.5 additional, and they made the 2.5 that was one-time permanent.
You have no indication right now that the new governor is going to maintain this or change it?
Well, I don't think he's taking away what the Governor Carney has recommended. Our hope is that it will be an additional on top of the 5 million that we got from Governor Carney, that it will be an additional 5 million, which we are working through the details to see what's going on that.
His presentation this morning.
Yeah.
they're looking through.
So it's more of an offense strategy than a defense strategy from our side. So we did a little bit more digging. So we are $200,000 higher on our core service, that the revenue is driven from our students on booked revenues. But what's even a better story is the collection side. So we are 4.5 million. If you recall, some of you that received the update just last week, I believe we were 4 million. As of a couple of days ago, we are 4.5 million up on our collections. As you can see there, we collected about 101 million compared to 97 million same time frame last year. Our collection is really phenomenal, the work that Carol Boyer-Yancey and her team are doing. We're 88% collected on just revenues that were booked this year. We're actually 93% collected on revenues that were booked last year. On the expense side, just as you can see here, which the point I was making earlier, so all the categories that you see there were almost flat or below last year, except for salaries and benefits. And that's why I linked the increase to specifically the CBA agreements that were negotiated, because you can see there, all the bars in orange are either flat or below, except when it comes to salary and benefits, it's higher than the blue. This is where we believe we're gonna land. On the revenue, we believe we're gonna be at 96%, give or take, slightly lower on the expense side with 95%. This is where the dollar translation to some of those percentages. So we believe that we will gain about 17 million on booked revenues to end around 171 million. And we will probably have to book about 87 million worth of expenses to land at 169 million. This is the cash situation. So what you see there, the blue are our inflow, the orange is our outflows. The one that are stronger colors is what has been booked. Those are actuals. The see-through color one are the one that were forecasted mainly by Dan Thompson and his team. As you can see there, we are forecasting a slight positive. We believe it may change to higher than that, but right now, as we said, we're looking at $300,000 positive as we end fiscal year 25, which is 6/30 of this year. We also anticipate using our bridge, which is our line of credits that we have with JP Morgan Chase, and we anticipate our state funds to be available to us on July 1. I won't go through the appendix, but it gives you really, relatively speaking to last year, how we compare, and this year, how we compare both on dollars and percentages for revenue and expenses. Any questions?
Any questions, anyone?
It may be another discussion, but what about reserves? Are we building reserves?
Yes. So
Does that fit in all of this?
we are not anticipating using any of the reserves for this fiscal year. So we have long-term, which is our investments, which is the 20 million that university has access to. And then there is another 20 million with the foundation on the endowment side. And if you recall, there is a 5 million reserve that's outside of that investments that was built a couple of years ago that has not been used. And in addition to that, there is a 12 million from the 20 million investment that the board has approved to move from a long-term investment to a reserve fund. So short answer is we have roughly, depending on the market, has been wild, but we have roughly about $17 million on reserves.
Any questions, folks? Good. Thank you, Nas. I just want to make a really quick comment. Continuity. And we've got our president, and we have Anas and Dan, and I don't think we acknowledge these guys enough. Frankly, it's we're talking about the portal. Well, we don't want you guys in the portal. I can tell you that. Who can remember the turnover in our financial team? Right. And the lack of continuity, I think, hurt us. with respect to our audits. Would you agree with that, John? In trying to deal with the weaknesses and so forth. So we just want to thank you guys. You know, it's arduous, rigorous, tedious work. And we just thank you for hanging in there, and we appreciate, you know, the expertise and the continuity.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, so we have a few announcements. Board committee meetings, day 1, June 5th. Board committee meetings, day 2, June 12th. Full board meeting, June 26th. Commencement, May 9th. 2025 HBCU Philanthropy Symposium, July 6th through the 10th. Let me add one for good measure. We got a golf event on April 25th. So we hope that everybody will be there, participate, and have fun. It's going to be a wild quail. Wild quail.
What's the date again?
April 25th, Friday.
That's why only.
So, yes, sir. Yes, sir, please.
For the announcements, the June meeting is our annual meeting. And it is the meeting for the election of officers, the 1-year term.
That's true.
All right.
That's true.
If any, you know, we do accept nominations from the floor. So there, you know, if you have a desire to be an officer, chair, first vice chair, second vice chair, treasurer, secretary, let the governance committee know, and we'll make sure, you know, that it shows up. But it is the annual meeting, and it's the election of officers for the 1-year term.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Pardon the oversight.
No, it's okay.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, public comment, Ms. Stoner?
No public comment.
No one's signed up for public comment. Okay, understood. All right, next order of business is executive session. May we have a motion to discuss personnel and legal matters?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we move from the regular order of business into executive session to discuss personnel and legal matters.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Everybody knows.